Hi, this is Frid from the Joy of Syntax and English in Color. For today, I want to talk about German in color. 2 days ago, I made a video about capitalization in German, and I promised to make 2 more videos, one about sentence structure and one about commas. And I've decided to put them all into one video. Well, I'll try my best. I just made a video and it turned out to be crap. And so I'm trying again. Okay, I'll share my screen and we'll show you not a PowerPoint, but a Word document today. Okay, I think it's better to not talk about rules, but about habits. Languages and people have habits, and they can change over time, and actually they do change over time. And I think it's very important to remember many things actually, but right now to remember that, spoken language existed first, and then written language evolved, and it keeps evolving. At first, written language was closely tied to spoken language, and then written language took on a life of its own. And now we have different genres and different registers for both spoken and for written language. But when you look at the history of writing and printing and written language, you cannot help but notice that spelling changes and grammar changes, words change. And so, we need to agree on something so that we can have successful communication. But at the same time, we have to remember that these rules or habits are just man-made things. And it's good to try to understand them because we want to communicate successfully, but it's also very important not to be enslaved by them. Okay, so I'm just going to give you some guidelines, and I'm going to do that with the help of Räuber Hotzenplotz again. Räuber Hotzenplotz is a delightful children's novel written by the children's book author Ottfried Preußler, and I recommend it. I love all his books. Well, I didn't read all of them, but most of them. And I think they're fun. And they're children's books that are also fun for adults. And I think they're great for teaching German. Okay, here are 2 habits I want to share with you today. One habit refers to or describes the behavior of finite verb forms. In main clauses, finite verbs are in position 2. In subclauses, finite verb forms are in final position. Boom, that's it. And I will show that to you with the help of a few sentences. So I formulated the rule for you here. In a main clause, the finite verb is always in second position. This rule also holds true in the case of optional adverbial subclauses in initial position. You'll see an example in a minute, which are always separated by a comma. In a subclause, the finite verb is always in final position. Please don't confuse verb phrases with finite verbs and with non-finite verb forms. If you don't know what I mean, ask me in the comment section below and I will make a video about that. Habit number 2. Subclauses are always separated by a comma, no exception. And this holds true regardless of what kind of subclause it is. And regardless, there are adverbial subclauses and relative subclauses and subject clauses and object clauses, so there are different types. And then there are certain clauses that can also be modifiers, and they can be modifiers inside of clause elements. And those types of subclauses are never separated by a comma in English, and they always are in German. So that's tough. But only initially, and then later it's as easy as falling off a log. Okay, so here is our first sentence from the Räuber Hotzenplotz. Einmal saß Kaspars Großmutter auf der Bank vor ihrem Häuschen in der Sonne und malte Kaffee. It's a compound sentence, and this is a compound sentence that's connected. The 2 main clauses are connected with a coordinating conjunction. And these types of compound sentences are called verbundene Satzreihe in German. The subject of the second clause is identical with the subject of the first, and so it could be left out, elided. Okay, now please note the adverbial is in initial position and the finite verb form is in second position. Here, the finite verb form is really also in second position. You know, the subject would be here und sie malte Kaffee. And actually, I may, maybe I should just put that in there. So if it had been in there, if he had opted to use it, it would have been there. Und sie malte Kaffee. So when it's elided, you still have it in position 2. It just looks like position 1 because the subject is implied. Now, just for fun, I turned the word order around. It's still a correct sentence. Now we have the subject in position 1 and still the verb is in position 2. Kaspers Großmutter saß einmal auf der Bank vor ihrem Häuschen in der Sonne und malte Kaffee. So, I hope this helps. Let's move on. Kasperl und sein Freund Seppel hatten ihr zum Geburtstag eine neue Kaffeemühle geschenkt. Die hatten sie selbst erfunden. Again, this is a compound sentence. I should say sentence. You know what the difference is between a sentence and a clause? A clause is a syntactic structure that has a subject and a finite predicate. And a sentence is a syntactic, is not necessarily a syntactic structure. It's a complete thought that appears between and punctuation marks, or marked at the beginning, where the first word starts with a capital letter, no matter what kind of a word it is, and what kind of word class it belongs to, and the whole thing ends with an end punctuation mark. There is a difference between a one-word sentence and a clausal sentence and a formulaic sentence. I talk about that in a different video, so that I don't want to go in here into this here. Excuse me. The problem is that when we talk in German, clause is translated as Satz and sentence is translated as Satz. So that's a little bit of a pain. English is so cool. Anyway, so this is a German type of compound sentence where the two main clauses have been connected via a comma. This is rarely done in English, but it's quite often done in German. And this kind of compound sentence is called eine unverbundene Satzreihe because there is no coordinating conjunction. Okay, so now we have the subject in first position and we have the object in first position in the second clause. So that means, again, the rule holds true, or the habit is adhered to. The finite verb form is in position 2. Yeah, and in German you can have the object in the first position. That's no problem whatsoever. In English, that would be an extreme case of inversion. It happens, but anyway, we're not talking about English, even though it's my favorite language. Because I want to help you with German. All these insights came up when I was working with my delightful student from Mexico. And we felt that this was valuable, and so I'm sharing it here. Yeah, so we have a compound sentence, eine unverbundene Satzreihe. The first clause starts with the subject. The second starts with the object, and both have the finite verb form in position 2. And you see both, just in case you're wondering, this is the simple past, this is the simple past, simple past, simple past. Hatten geschenkt, hatten erfunden. That's the past perfect, the German past perfect, called a Plusquamperfekt, doesn't matter. And it's used because it talks about, that there's the time of the story, and in that's narrated in the simple past. And then the narrator mentions something that happened before this event took place. And so that's then, this anteriority is expressed with the help of the past perfect. Now, just to show you again how this rule applies, or this habit applies, I started the same sentence with the adverbial, and then the finite verb form remains in position 2, and the subject gets bumped behind it. So, Kasper und sein Freund Seppel hatten ihr zum Geburtstag eine Kaffeemühle geschenkt. Zum Geburtstag hatten Kasper und sein Freund Seppel ihr eine neue Kaffeemühle geschenkt. And whether you start with the subject or you start with the adverbial or the object, totally depends on what you want the focus to be on and on what creates a better transition and flow. Okay, now here I wanted to show you the sentence actually as I wanted to show you the same content in 2 sentences, two simple sentences, 2 Hauptsätze. And you simply place a full stop between them. And by the way, die is can be the article, and then it appears before a noun. It can be a demonstrative pronoun, and there's another demonstrative pronoun that can be diese. And then die can also be a relative pronoun. And I'm going to do that in the next sentence, in the next section. I turned this main clause into a relative clause. Oh, I do it here. Die sie selbst erfunden hatten. And look, I underlined it in yellow because it adds information about die Kaffeemühle, about the coffee grinder. So compare these. Kasper und sein Freund Seppel hatten ihr zum Geburtstag eine neue Kaffeemühle geschenkt. Die hatten sie selbst erfunden. And Kasper und sein Freund Seppel hatten ihr zum Geburtstag eine neue Kaffeemühle geschenkt, die sie selbst erfunden hatten. Because this is a relative clause, the finite verb form gets bumped to final position. Okay, now let's look at sentence 3. Wenn man daran kurbelte, spielte sie Alles neu macht der Mai. Das war Großmutters Lieblingslied. Wenn man daran kurbelte is an adverbial subclause of condition, right? It says there are 2 kinds of conditions, the if type of condition and then the whenever. So whenever this happens, so it's a mixture of condition and time. Whenever that happened, right? It when A happens, then B happens. So whenever you turn the crank, then the grinder played this favorite song. Now look at this. This is a subclause. So it looks as if it didn't. It looked as if it didn't form part of the main clause, but somehow semantically or syntactically it is considered an optional element of the main clause. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the verb form here, the finite verb. And this is something that many people coming from an English-speaking background often get wrong. They start with the adverbial and then they place the subject in first position instead of realizing that the adverbial subclause is treated like an adverbial. That's why I gave you an example here. It doesn't matter whether you use an adverbial subclause, wenn man daran kurbelte, or an adverbial, an adverb as adverbial. In both cases, you have the finite verb form in position 2. And by the way, das war Großmutters Lieblingslied. This is a second main clause, which again has been attached to the previous clause via comma. This is again a unverbundene Satzreihe, an unconnected compound clause. So, plötzlich spielte sie Alles neu macht der Mai. Manchmal spielte sie Alles neu macht der Mai. Jeden Abend spielte sie Alles neu macht der Mai. I was just playing in order to show you that no matter what kind of an adverbial we place there, adverbial clause or these kinds of adverbs as adverbials or noun phrases as adverbials. As long as the adverbial is in position 1, the finite verb is in position 2. And certain kinds of adverbials can be moved behind the verb, and then the subject gets bumped to position 1. Also entweder manchmal spielte sie alles neu macht der Mai, oder sie spielte manchmal alles neu macht der Mai. However, this adverbial subclause wouldn't sound good in medial position. It does, however, work in final position unless the next clause doesn't allow that, right? We always have to make sure that the transitions are smooth. And sometimes the architecture of a sentence allows certain positions, but the architecture of the paragraph doesn't. I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't, I'll discuss that in another video. Okay, now I want to show you the same sentence. This is the one that we already looked at. Now I produced a different version where I simply chose a full stop instead of a comma. That's possible. In this version, the second main clause is more closely connected to the first one. Here there is a clearer break. And now here I connected the content of the clause even more closely to the previous clause by turning it into a relative clause. Wenn man daran kurbelte, spielte sie alles neu macht der Mai, was Großmutters Lieblingslied war. And you can see that I turned it into a subclause because the finite verb form is in final position. Okay, in the next sentence, in the fourth sentence of Räuberhotz and Plotz, we have an interesting that clause as modifying clause of result. Check it out. Seit Großmutter die neue Kaffeemühle hatte, this is an adverbial subclause of time, ever since she got that new coffee grinder, machte ihr das Kaffeemahlen großen Spaß, would be one way of saying that. But instead of saying großen Spaß or sehr großen Spaß, Ottfried Preußler said, or the narrator said, solchen Spaß, dass sie doppelt so viel Kaffee trank wie früher. Such fun. So it caused such fun for her that she drank twice as much coffee than before. So this adjective is a special kind of limiting adjective, and in this case it is, so we have that as a pre-modifier of Spaß, and then we have that clause as a post-modifier, and the pre-modifier and the post-modifier work in conjunction. They work together. They together express this clause of result. I mean this condition of result. So we have an adjective plus that clause, and the same works in English. It was so cold that we froze our butts off. It was such fun that she drank twice as much coffee as before. Okay, and so now notice this whole thing is the clause element that functions as object. This clause element is an object. I'm sorry. This whole noun phrase functions as object, and yet there is a comma in there, and that's something you would not see in English. But, remember, when we make rules, there's a certain logic. There's a mindset that creates the rules. And within that mindset, this is logical. Because the guideline is, or the mindset is, we separate main clauses and subclauses. So all subclauses get separated by a comma, period. And then that's quite easy. The problems arise now. I'm just going through this book now, and so I'm explaining grammar with the help of a real life example, of course, sometimes there are some gray areas. There are some complicated cases, and that happens when there are reduced clauses. In the case of reduced clauses, people sometimes use. There is some disagreement or some uncertainty sometimes. The same is true with capitalization, by the way, which I dealt with in the previous video. There are these clear-cut cases, and then you know, with modern orthography and everything, some people, you know, sometimes people feel that what used to be a noun is now an adverb and vice versa. And then the rules or the habits for capitalization or you know, whatever change. So just remember, everything is man-made and man is not consistent. But here there is a consistency. So far in this section from Räuber, Hotzenplotz, everything is perfectly consistent and fantastic. Okay, so here I just showed you that sehr großen Spaß, this noun phrase is basically equivalent to this noun phrase. You know, it doesn't matter. The object can be small. It could just also be Spaß. Machte ihr das Kaffeemühlen Spaß? Machte ihr das Kaffeemühlen großen Spaß? Sehr großen Spaß. Solchen Spaß, dass sie doppelt so viel Kaffee trank wie früher. So it doesn't really matter how big or small the object is. You know, when it's just a noun phrase, there's no comma. And when then suddenly we have a subclause as modifier, then a comma is added, even though it's the same clause element. Now, finally, I want to show you sentence 5. This is interesting. This is a very big Satzreihe, a very big compound clause. We have 4 main clauses. We have 2 main clauses and a dash, and then 2 more main clauses. Auch heute hatte sie die Kaffeemühle schon zum 2. Mal aufgefüllt und eben wollte sie weitermalen. Look, we have main clauses, adverbial in initial position, finite verb in second position, and here adverbial in initial position, finite verb in second position. Now we have a dash to create suspense, and then we have da rauschte und knackte es in den Gartensträuchern. And then that's the first, that's the next main clause. Und eine barsche Stimme rief. Now we have subject, finite verb, object. And you could turn the third and fourth main clause into an adverbial subclause of simultaneity. And then it would look like this. Sie hatten heute auch die Kaffeemühle schon zum 2. Mal aufgefüllt. I just for fun switched the subject to initial position to show you that the finite verb form remains where it was before. My doggy wants to go outside. Sie hatten heute auch die, I'll go with you in a minute, okay baby? I'll just finish this. Shh, I'll just finish this, honey. Also, sie hatten heute auch die Kaffeemühle schon zum 2. Mal aufgefüllt und eben wollten sie weitermalen, als es in den Gartensträuchern rauschte und knackte, final position, next main clause, und eine barsche Stimme her mit dem Ding da rief. Of course, Ottfried Preußer's original sentence is way more better, but I just wanted to show you what happens when you play with word order. Yeah, German is much more flexible with regard to word order. And that's one of the reasons is that we have all these case endings, those case endings that are so hard to remember. I hope this helped you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.